Hello, in this course we will learn how to use Pygame. First of all, we will see how to install it and then how we can create games with Pygame. So Pygame is basically a module for Python that we can use to create different games. It's designed to make us be able to create games, and you can install it for Windows, Linux, Mac, whatever operating system you have. So let me show you how you can install it here for Linux. So open up your terminal and you can type python 3-m pip install -U pygame -user. So what this will do is it will use the pip module and will install Pygame for our current user. So if you go ahead and run this command, you can see that I have already installed it, but for you, if you haven't already done that, it should take a minute or so to install. So in case you are on a Windows machine, what you need to do is open up your command prompt and type this command or this command. It depends. Maybe both will work, maybe one won't. Just try these two commands and see if you can install it that way. So let's begin setting Pygame up. So first of all, let's create a new file. We can call this shapes.py. Okay, and now we can import the Pygame module just like we import modules other times. So now we can do pygame.init, and what this will do is it will initialize the Pygame module. And now let's go ahead and create a simple window. So in order to do that, let's just create two variables to make this easier. Display width, and we can set this equal to 600, and display height, which this can be 400. Now we can do pygame.display.setMode, and in here, in this parenthesis, we have to put a tuple that has two numbers, the display width and the display height. So in order to do that, we put a second pair of parentheses, and we can say display width, comma, display height. So if we go ahead and run this, you can see a window pops up and then immediately closes. And the reason why it immediately closes without some kind of warning or without doing anything else is because this here is the end of our script. So when our program reaches the end of our code, it will just terminate the window. So in order to prevent that, we need to add an infinite loop here at the bottom. So we can say while true, pass. So what this will do is when it reaches this point, it will run an infinite amount of times. So this is how we can keep the window open for as long as we like. You might notice though that when you press the X button here, the window will not terminate. Instead, it will freeze and ask you to, as you can see, force quit here. So then you have to just stop the program and terminate it from inside your IDE. So in order to prevent that and make the X actually be able to be used, we need to use the following code. So let's go ahead and inside of our infinite loop, we can do for event in pygame.event.get. So if event.type equals to pygame.quit, then what we need to do is do the pygame.quit and exit our program. So what this will do is inside of our forever running while loop, it will check inside of this for loop the events for each event that we can get inside of the second. And if this event is pygame.quit, which this event is triggered by clicking the X button, then it will quit the window and exit our program. So if we go ahead and run this, you can see that if I press the X button here, the window closes. Again, the reason is because we take each event in our Pygame module and we can check if the type of the event is the quit event, and if it is really the quit event, we can just close the window by doing pygame.quit. So now let's actually store what we call in Pygame a surface object. So a surface object controls the graphics that we can display on the screen, and whatever we want to draw on the surface and show on the screen, we can actually control it from within the surface object. So in order to do that, we can actually make a new variable called game surface and set that equal to our Pygame display.setMode. So now we have created a new surface object called game surface, and we set it equal to the window that we open. So let's change the background color of our game. So for now you can see that this is black. So let's change it to white. So in order to change that, we need to use a function called fill. And this function can be applied to surface objects. So let's go under our for loop and type game surface, which is our surface object, dot fill, and inside of the parentheses we can just create here some tuples. So let's create white and set this equal to 255, 255, 255, and this just gets three numbers between 0 and 255, and what these numbers represent is the amount of red, green and blue inside of our color. So if you use 255 for all of these, you will get white. If you want to do red, you could do 255, 0, 0, because this will just maximize the red and leave the rest at 0. If you wanted to do green, you could do 0, 255, 0, or blue would be 0, 0, 255. And different combinations of these different numbers produce every possible color. So for now our white here is set to this tuple over here. So let's fill this with white. So if we go ahead and run this, you can see that our window is still black. So the reason why it's still black and hasn't changed to white is because every time we make a change to the surface object, we need to update its information. So let's go ahead and under game surface.fill white, let's add pygame.display.update. And what this will do is it will update any information that might have been changed, such as our background color. So now, as you can see, the background is now white. And of course, you could do anything like red. Remember, all of these colors we just set over here. Red will just turn this to red, or green will just make this green. Any color that you would like to create, you would just play around with these values. So for example, this random color here, if I set this to some values like 100, 50 and 26, random color. So I don't know what that color is, and it's a brown. So you can play around with this, or maybe Google whichever color you need to find, and actually change this background color to anything, any possible color you can imagine. So this while loop is called our main game loop. So as you can see, this loop consists of three basic and core things. So first of all, we have the for loop that handles all of the events. So we have a for loop, and we can use different if statements inside to take cases for each event. And we also have the make changes portion of the while loop. In here we make any changes that we want to the screen, and finally we have the update screen, which saves all of the information and updates the display and anything that might have been changed. So these are the three core things of the game loop that you always want to have. So before we get started drawing a grid and using the grid concept, we need to understand something very important. So in normal math, this is a normal grid, and in here at this very center, the coordinates are 0, 0. So in Pygame, this is not the case. So in Pygame, you can think of the grid as going in these directions, and this is the 0, 0 point. So the top left corner is the starting point. And in here you can count. So for example, we set the window to 600 in width and 400 in height. So that would mean that this would be 600 pixels wide and it would be 400 pixels tall. So this is the regular math, and this is what works for Pygame. So you need to have this concept in mind and don't confuse yourself with how the regular coordinate system and grid works. So another thing that you need to have in mind is that maybe you would want to use dimensions here for width and height that are easily divided. So for example, if you wanted to create 6 10 pixel rectangles, it would be easier to just use 480 here, because 480 divided by 60 is 8 instead of 400 which divided by 60 is 6.66. So just remember, if you want to use some shape and your current width and height doesn't work, you can always change it so it can be more easily divided. So now let's just change this to 480 and let's start drawing some shapes. So first of all, let's draw a rectangle. So let's go ahead and delete all of this here. And now what we need to do is to game surface dot fill, and we can use black. We haven't actually declared black, so black here would be 0, 0, and 0. And black might be the default one, but it's better if you actually specify the color and don't just leave it blank. So then what you need to do is do pygame.draw.rect, which stands for rectangle. And this, as you can see, takes as parameters the game surface, which is our surface object, the color of the rectangle, which would be the tuple that we created here. Let's make this red. And now we have to specify 4 other coordinates. So the first one will be the x and y that start from the top left. So let's use 0 and 0. That means that we start from the top left. As you remember, the beginning coordinates of the grid in Pygame is the top left and not the center of the screen. And next we have 2 more numbers that are the width and the height of that rectangle. So let's do 150. So what this will do is it will draw a rectangle on our game surface. It will be red. It will start from 0, 0, and it will be 100 pixels wide and 50 pixels tall. So let's go ahead and do pygame.display.update to update the screen. And let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so as you can see, the beginning of our rectangle is the top left because we have set 0 and 0 here as coordinates, and it's 100 pixels wide and 50 pixels tall. So this is how you can create a rectangle. Okay, so now let's do something different. Let's create a row of squares 60 by 60 pixels across our screen. So let's, instead of just creating them separately, we can do this in a loop. So let's go ahead and create a for loop. So for I in range 10, so this will run 10 times. What we need to do is pygame.draw.rect, and now let's do game surface, and let's make this red, and let's make this a, okay, so let's have a start x here, which we will set to 0. And now we can do here start x. So we start from the x that is this variable, and we start from 0, and we go all the way 60 and 60, because we want our rectangles to be 60 by 60. So then what we need to do is also increment start x. So start x plus equals add 60. So first of all, we will create a rectangle from 0, 0. That will be 60 pixels in width and 60 pixels in height. And then we will create another one starting from 60. And then another one starting from 120. So we will create many squares, one next to each other. So let's go ahead and run this. As you can see, this is here the first square, then there is the other square, and the other square. So these are all next to each other. You can't see any space between them, because right when one ends, another square starts. So now let's see how we can fill all of this screen with squares. So in order to do that, let's also have here a start y, which also will be 0. And let's do this actually with the help of a nested loop. So in here, let's actually delete this code just so we can have more practice. So for x in range 8, and actually x might not be a very good example, so for j or for I in range 8, let's do start x 0, and let's delete this from here. Okay, now we start the x from 0, so each time we have a new row, we reset the x to the starting position. Then let's do for j in range 10, so one loop is for the rows and one is for the columns. So inside here we can do pygame draw.rect, and we can draw inside of our game surface with the color red, and we can start from start x and start y, and they will be of course 60 by 60. Now what we also need to do inside here is also increment start x by 60, and outside of our nested for loop we can also increase the start y. So what this will do is fill the whole screen with rectangles. So this is not just a red background, these are individual squares in every row and column. So as you can see, we start by making the x equals 0, and then we repeat this code 10 times. So this just creates one single row full of red squares. So afterwards we add 60 to the start y. So what this does is it moves us to the next row, and then it repeats all this again, starting again from x0. So now let's actually change the color a bit. So first of all, inside before our for loop here, what we can do is also set a equal to red and b equal to blue. So afterwards we can make this, instead of red, we can make this color a, and right after the end of one row we can do a comma b equals b comma a to swap the values of these two. So if we run this, you can see that each row has interchangeable colors. So first of all we have red, and then blue, and then red, and then blue. So now let's go ahead and create a circle. So let's delete all of this here. Now first of all we would have to use the Python, or excuse me, the pygame draw.circle, and this here just takes the following parameters. So first of all we have the surface object, our game surface, then we have the color of the circle. So first of all let's do green, and then we can change it, and then it takes two more parameters. First of all, it's a tuple of the x and y. So x and y is the coordinates of the center of the circle. Let's do 300 and 240, for example. And then we have another parameter, which is the radius of the circle. So let's set this equal to 25. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so in here you can see that starting from the corner on the top left, going x 300, so here x is 300, and going y 240, so here is y 240. And then starting from this center point, we make a circle of radius 25 pixels. Okay, this is how you can create a circle. So now let's actually start drawing ellipses. So in order to do that, we have to use the pygame.draw.ellipse, and we have to specify the game surface, which is the surface object. Again, let's use green as the color. And now what we can use here is exactly like the rectangle that we set a beginning x and a beginning y, and then these here are the width and the height of the object. So instead of actually drawing a rectangle, it will draw an ellipse by just taking these numbers. So this here is the starting point, 275 and 200, and these here are the dimensions of the object. So let's go ahead and run this. As you can see, we start again from x 275, which is here. We go down until we hit 200, and this will be 50 pixels wide and 80 pixels tall. So now let's see how we can make a line. So we can use the pygame.draw.line, and now we have to specify the surface object, which is our game surface. We have to specify a color, so let's say we can use red as the color. And now let's specify the starting coordinates and the ending coordinates. So first of all, you have the let's use 10,10. This will be the coordinates that we start the line. So this is the point where the line starts. Then is the point when the line ends. So let's end it at 50 and 10. And now, which is optional, we can specify another thickness parameter. For example, let's use 10. This is entirely optional. You can just leave it like that. Or you can specify a number which indicates how thick the line is going to be. So if you run this, you can see we get a line starting from 10 and 10. 10, 10 here, and it finishes at 50, 10, which is over here. So these are the two coordinates of the line, of the 2 points between the line, and a line is drawn between those 2 points. So first of all, we have our 10, 10, then we have our 50, 10, and then a line is drawn in between. So if I was to remove the thickness parameter, you would just see a really small or thin line. So last but not least, let's see how we can create a polygon. So a polygon is a shape with many sides. So let's start by using the pygame.draw.polygon, and in here we have, as always, to specify our surface object. Then the color, let's make this red, and then we have to specify all of the points between its surface. So first of all, we can make this start here at 0, 0. Then we can move over to 50, 0. And then let's do 50, 50. So this has 3 points here. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a simple triangle, as you can see over here. Now, you can always create all sorts of shapes, like if I did 0,100 here at the end, it would create this kind of shape, and so on. You can add as many points as you'd like, and a shape will be drawn between all of these points. So finally, let's take a look at the exercises you have to do for this first lesson. So first of all, for the display part, you can change the screen to pink. So in order to do that, you have to Google what the values for the pink are in order to create that color, and then assign it to the window. Then you have the rectangles. So first of all, draw a square anywhere on the screen, then draw a rectangle 40 by 60 pixels in the center of the screen, and then create this shape over here. So it's like the one we did, but with the stripes now facing the other direction. So for the circle, you have to draw a circle with a diameter equal to the height of the game surface. So the diameter is this blue line, so it's 2 times the radius, so keep that in mind. And also draw the following shape. So draw this like dartboard looking shape. So next up, for ellipses, draw some other ellipses of different sizes and colors. So just play around with the ellipses and draw a circle using the ellipse syntax. So this should be interesting. So for the lines, draw a vertical line, draw a line from 0, 0 to 100, 100, and draw an X. So essentially draw 2 lines that cross each other to make it look like an X. And for the polygon, just try different combinations, play around with different coordinates and see what kind of shapes you can make. So this is it. Play around with all of these different possibilities you have for the different shapes, because you need to get comfortable using them in order to create different shapes for your game. That's it. I will see you on the next lesson.